Ajit Gulabchand, Chairman and Managing Director of Hindustan Construction Company Limited, is also with us. Mr. Gulabchand, your views on this budget?
Well, it doesn't have. My comments are based on the speech that the finance minister gave in the House today, because we haven't gone into the details of the budget document in order to know if there are other surprises, both in fine print or any other things that have been missed out while speaking in Parliament. Having said that, from overall, they've decided that despite some of the restrictions, that fiscal deficit, as well as the fear of inflation that comes, that they have decided to go ahead with a large spend on capital expenditure. Almost 9 to 10% of the total receipts is being spent on infrastructure, which is roads and railways. There are some other hidden infrastructure in agricultural development, another 2%, so making it about 11%. This is approximately 9% or 7% of GDP. So I think this is a very healthy investment being made in capital expenditure for India to lay the foundation for continued growth, to reach its $5 trillion economy target. One. Second is, at a time when unemployment has been a curse at this stage, as well as having infrastructure being constructed during this period, creates employment, immediate employment. It's a multiplier for other employment that comes as a result of the infrastructure coming into being. And to that extent, I think this budget has done well, given the constraints, because there is always the fear that while you go ahead and spend so much money, you might be tempting inflation to come on. And if it comes on in a big way, it once again stymies the growth of infrastructure, and the growth rate gets discounted. So to that extent, I think they've done a very, very tight job of spending this money on infrastructure. It is just 9% of the receipts. It is also about 7-8% of GDP, which I think is a very, very good sign. The dangers apart. The dangers are known. It is either inflation on one side, not generating enough employment to beat the trend is the other. And I think they've done well.
Mr. Gulabchand, if I may ask you, what are the areas where we could have actually made a difference as far as this budget is concerned? I'm not going to ask you to comment on the politicians, but some of the points that are being raised is that there's nothing in here for the middle class, nothing in here for the farmers, nothing in here for MSMEs. I want to know from you, what's your opinion on what could have been done differently?
I think increasingly the budget, while it is meant as a kind of a budget for the year, it has become a statement of an economic policy and economic thinking that they're up to. So what they are trying to do is stimulate the economy enough to get a good growth rate. And this has to be done despite the problems of fiscal deficit created by the pandemic and our earlier slowdown before the pandemic. So when this is the situation, as far as we are concerned, doing something for a class, they have not doled out subsidies by class or by order of people. They have tried to create a situation for the economy to grow. And for that, they have, despite these limitations, talked of a very large amount of infrastructure spend, which is what we call the Capex spend. And that, I think, is what's going to help. And they have to also tightly manage, on the other side, the fear that inflation will go out of hand, as well as that the infrastructure they're going to build may not happen fast enough because of inflation and other situations, the disease rearing its head again in some other form, etc. These fears continue. So I think that doing for the overall economy does for everybody.
Mr. Gulabchand, my final question, do you feel that this extra stress on capital expenditure as outlaid by the finance minister, which you also mentioned in the opening comment, could actually start a cycle of growth? More capital expenditure, more employment opportunities, core sectors improving. Do you feel that this is the key, the mantra to reviving the economy?
See,
Or so is the vision of the government?
I think what they've understood is the economy must grow is the answer. While you have to do, and out of the 37 lakh total receipts, only 9% is being spent on infrastructure. The rest is going towards welfare and several issues. So putting a little balm on the pain has also been done. But when it comes to growth, to create that growth, it has decided that infrastructure spend is the best. Not only it creates employment during the period of infrastructure construction, but the multiplier that the constructed facilities also create employment and growth. So I think they've done very well here. What we need to worry about is that another disease does not again come up and hit us again. Second is inflation doesn't really go out of hand to kill it. And for that period, they have shown a lot more fiscal responsibility in what they're doing. And I think, therefore, it's a conservative budget with the right welfare measures and, given the constraints, the right amount of expenditure on infrastructure with a $5 trillion economy in mind at a later date.
All right, Mr. Gulabchand, thank you very much for joining us.